All right, if you go on to the shared one folder, you'll be able to see all the markups that I do. I'm going to ask that you don't open that, the one that I'm doing while I'm live with it, but you'll be able to see the markups that I do on here. Now, I've worked through this Heparin protocol several times. It's listed on the YouTube channel with, basically working it through, but I'll show you fresh. That way you can kind of see it with like fresh eyes. And so before I do that, let me just go ahead and clear off my markings, and then we can do an alternative version of the Heparin protocol. And I think I saw everyone here is Allegheny campus, so I think we're good. So we'll just stick with this. I don't need to do the alternative things. So like I said, just give me a minute because I'm going to circle some of these things just so we know what they are. All right. And if you go to the OneShare folder and the Microsoft OneDrive share folder, you can also, if you choose something other than the 23 Spring, it'll be the same content, but without my writing on it. So you can have like a blank version of a practice test. And I think someone was emailing me, and I think you might actually have a copy of an updated version of, or at least a 2018 version of the practice test, but it could actually be exactly the same as this. I just don't know. So if you do have an alternative version and you want to email it to me, I can update it, and I can even make sure that the questions are answered appropriately. Okay. So for this question, or for the Heparin protocol, what just to kind of give you a little bit of background and why this looks the way it does. This is, what's listed here 1 through 15. It's kind of like what you would have like in your chart, or maybe it would be somewhere like on a wall or somewhere that just tells you basically the steps to follow when following the entirety of the Heparin protocol. But with math, we're only concerned about, or at least with dosage calculation, we're only concerned about some of the components of the Heparin protocol, which is why sometimes when you first look at this, it looks very overwhelming, right? It looks daunting. And so what we're going to do is kind of, I'm going to show you how to navigate this problem and hopefully help you to reduce your anxiety when you look at this problem and be like, oh, okay, this is what it is. So first of all, it starts off with just giving you like, it takes a while to even get to the questions. Okay. So it tells you the protocol, tells you what to do. Bolus the patient. So this is your order, right? Bolus the patient with 80 units kilogram body weight, and then start a drip at 18 units per kilogram per hour. It also tells you the patient's weight. Then it goes through and it gives you all these steps in the protocol. And after the protocol, it tells you to answer the following questions. So on your test next week, they're going to ask you to calculate a bolus, and they're going to ask you to calculate a flow rate or a drip rate. Okay. They might do it as an initial bolus, initial drop rate, or initial flow rate, or they'll ask you to calculate it based off of after they've already been on it for a few hours, what would the new flow rate be? Okay. So on the practice test, I've given you 4 questions, but in the actual test, you're only going to get 2 of the 4 mentioned, 1 bolus, 1 flow rate. They both should be within the same kind of both initial or both after 6 hours. And even though it's 2 questions, it counts as 1 question. So if you miss both questions, which you won't, I'll show you how to do this and then you'll be fine. But if for some reason you miss both questions, it only counts as missing 1. Also, if you miss 1, though, it still counts as missing 1. So hopefully I'll show you how to do this and you won't miss any. Okay. All right. So with the Heparin protocol, what we're looking at here is just, like I said, a series of steps. Step one is just reading this thing, okay? So the protocol is essentially the same thing as your order, okay? Then we have to look at, okay, we know our order, we know our patient's weight. What about availability? Like, what is our available meds? Well, that's actually what step 2 is telling us. Step 2 is telling us what we have available. Available is heparin 25,000 units and 250 milliliters, half normal saline, and a bolus dose of 1,000 units per milliliter. Okay, so those are our availables. So the reason you're getting asked 2 questions is because you're basically talking about 2 separate steps within the protocol. Protocol is just everything you're doing to help prevent this patient from clotting or throwing, clots prematurely, and also you want to monitor them so that they don't start bleeding out. You'll notice that where it says number 10, and I start it, number 10 is just a repeat of what it says up here. So number 10 is also stating the order. Now, the reason I'm going through this and showing you these little things here is because no matter the question you get, if they are asking you a heparin protocol question, it's the same available, it's the same order. The only thing that's really going to change is the patient's weight. Okay. So step 1 is you want to convert the patient's weight from pounds to kilograms. And I think we all know how to do that at this point. We're just going to divide by 2.2. And you're going to get an answer of 50 kilograms. Do you need to write that here? You do not. Okay, if you want to, by all means, go ahead. All they really care about is that you answer the questions that are going to be listed down below. All right. So it says first to calculate the number of milliliters to administer for the bolus, and they're talking about the initial bolus. So again, looking at the start, it tells us to bolus with 80 units per kilogram. So that's what I'm going to do. We're going to take the patient's weight, 50 kilograms. I'm going to multiply by 80 units per kilogram. I'm going to get 4,000 units. Now, if the question had asked you how many units for the bolus would be done, but it says how many milliliters. So the next step is I'm going to take my 4,000 units and I'm going to have to convert that from units to milliliters. How do I do that? I'm going to go to my available. You've done this before. I'm going to go to my available. My available says what? Bolus dose, right? Because that's what we're talking about, bolus, 1,000 units per milliliter. So I don't want units. I do want milliliter. 1,000 units. And my answer for my initial bolus is just going to be 4 milliliters. So again, the trick to this question is just knowing where to find the information. And then once you know where to find it, you know what to do with it. Let's do the flow rate. So flow rate, again, going back up to the order, the initial order tells us to start a drip at 18 units per kilogram per hour. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to take the patient's weight, so 50 kilograms, times my initial drop rate, or my initial flow rate of 18 units per kilogram per hour. $50 times 18 is 900 units per hour. Now you might be saying, hey, I remember doing something with units per hour. That's what questions 22 and 23 were supposed to be helping you out with, is just reminding you, or going and converting units per hour to milliliters per hour. So this is exactly what you're doing here. So 22 is a good warm up to what you're doing right now. The step that you didn't know was how did you get to the 1,000 units per hour, and in this instance the 900 units per hour. Okay, so 900 units per hour is what we have. We don't want units per hour, we want milliliters per hour. So I need to find a way to convert units to milliliters. And we should have a way to do that. So we're going to go up to the protocol, look at our available, and notice in our available, we have 25,000 units in 250 milliliters, half normal saline. That's our IV bag, right? And isn't that what we're calculating when we're calculating a flow rate? We're calculating how fast the solution is coming out of the IV bag and going into our patient. So since we know what that is now, I can just plug those numbers in. 250 ml, 25,000 units. 900 times 250 divided by 25,000 will give me 9 milliliters per hour. So again, the only thing that would change on this particular question or this this protocol is what the patient's weight is. So maybe the patient's 75 kilograms. Maybe the patient's only 32 kilograms. What is the patient's weight? That's what ultimately determines what your final outcome is. But the other steps are the same. Patient's weight times 80 divided by 1,000. That's your bolus dose, initial bolus dose. Initial infusion rate, patient's weight in kilograms times 18 divided by, or times 250 divided by 25,000. All right. The next portion of the protocol says, after 6 hours, we reassess the patient and we notice that they have an APTT of 43 seconds. Basically, we're evaluating their clotting time, right? So we look in the protocol. You have steps 11 through 15. It tells you if APTT is, and then you just follow those steps. So if you know what the APTT is, then you would follow the steps that are listed in 11 through 15. Or if it just gives it to you and tells you what to do, then that's what you do. So it says to rebolus with 40 units per kilogram, and then to increase the rate by 2 units per kilogram per hour. So going here, it says calculate the number of milliliters to prepare, meaning for the new bolus, what are we going to prepare? Same patient, right? They still weigh 50 kilograms. That has not changed. But what has changed is the bolus dose strength. The order has changed. Okay. That gives me 2,000 units. Then I'm going to convert units to milliliters. We know that the bolus dosage strength is 1,000 units. And so I get 2 ml. Notice that 80 or half of 80 is 40. So half of 4 should be 2. That would be another way. But you may not have done the initial bolus to calculate the subsequent change, which is why I'm saying that. Now you might be wondering, well, how else could this question change other than the patient's weight? Well, the APTT could change. We could, do no bolus and decrease the rate by 2 units. We could rebolus with another 80 units and then increase the rate by another 4 units per kilogram per hour. So it just depends on what it says we're supposed to do. And I hope that makes sense, that, or at least now makes more sense where they're getting all this information from, or where I'm getting the information from is it's just from the protocol. If you do a Google search for Heparin Protocol, you're going to see exactly what is written here. Just might be written out better than I did. So, All right, now it does say to calculate the new infusion rate. So if we're talking about the APTT of 43 seconds, it says to increase the rate by 2 units per kilogram per hour. What was our initial infusion rate? Our initial infusion rate was 18 units per kilogram per hour. So if I'm increasing by 2, 18 plus 2 is 20. So I'm going to take the same patient, same weight, 50 kilograms. Now multiplying by the new infusion rate of 20 units per kilogram per hour. And I'm going to get 1,000 units per hour. This should look familiar. Then I'm going to convert units per hour to milliliters per hour. And in order to do that, I need to convert units to milliliters. I'm going to go back to my infusion where it tells me, or I'm sorry, my protocol where it tells me my available. My available again is 25,000 units and 250 milliliters, half normal saline. So I'm going to come down 250 milliliters, 25,000 units. And I'm going to get an answer of 10 milliliters per hour. So that's how you would answer the Heparin protocol. Now, if you wanted to challenge yourself a little bit, we can actually go through this. We can change some of the variables and we can do this differently. Okay. But first, I will show you number 24. So 24, you can see I have it worked out here. You should know how to get to the 20 hours. The next thing is, you're welcome. You should know how to get to the 20 hours, right? So you just take the total volume divided by 50, and that's how many hours it took to reduce that. So if that were 250 ml, you would say 4 hours, but because it's only 50 ml, it's going to take 20 hours. So what did we start? We started at Monday at 8 a.m., right? So you'd rewrite that as 0800. You're welcome for working out 25. Absolutely. We start Monday at 8 a.m. So the way I rationalize it is, what will it be in 24 hours? Well, in 24 hours, it'll be Tuesday at 0800 or 8 a.m. Then I just take away 4 hours from that. So Tuesday at 4 a.m. or Tuesday at 0400, because I do think they want you to write it in military time. Does that make sense? So again, you just revisit your clock and just remember, like, in 12 hours, you're going to switch from AM to PM or PM to AM, depending on what you're talking about. And 24 hours, you're going to be in the same, you'll be back in AM, but, or PM, depending on where you start, but you'll be on a different day. So where this gets a little bit tricky is if it's like, let's say it's 10 p.m. or 2200 hours, and 4 hours have gone, what day and time. So you'd be at 0200 the next day, or 2 a.m. the next day. So just, revisit your clock. But hopefully this helps the 24 hours, just going from there. If there's no other questions, I can work through another variation of the Heparin protocol, or but if you have other questions, just type it into chat or unmute and let me know. would it benefit you to see a variation of this, and if you're good, then you don't have to stay the whole time, but you have me for another half hour or so. So I'm happy to work through another heparin protocol if you want to see it.
I had a quick question. I came in like a few minutes late, so I'm sorry if I missed it. For number 20, are we, I just want to make sure that like I answer it properly. Are we just circling what's the strongest concentration, or are we calculating?
So you got to calculate, right?
Okay.
Yeah. So you're using the strongest concentration to find out what that is. So these are just, are you at Allegheny campus?
I am.
Okay, yeah. So I did, the only thing I've gone over was the was 25. So
Okay.
yeah, so that was all that I've done so far. But yeah, you want to make sure you choose the strongest concentration, then you're just doing 60 over 20, and then it gives you the 3 ml. Yeah.
Okay.
There's better questions, like, so if you go to you don't have to do this, but if you go to like North, Boyce, or South, and some of the review questions I put together for them, or that I've got received from them, you will see like variations of what a reconstitution question probably should look like, which is basically looking at a label and trying to figure out how to do a reconstitution. These are just more so just understanding how to choose a stronger concentration. And then the second one is more likely what you're going to see, where it gives you that extra table, the milliliters diluent added. You just need to know not to incorporate that when you're doing your math.
Thank you.
Yep, you're welcome. Yeah, and also you'll see like I put in like a few extra questions like for the you'll see these things like that are not in the original version of the practice test. So this is actually, this question here is actually coming from a 4th semester question, because someone asked me about converting the micrograms per kilogram per minute to milliliters per hour. And so that's what this question is. I don't think, I want to say that's more for 4th semester or for the other campuses. I don't think that's you guys. I'm just trying to see. I don't think that applies to you for Allegheny at 220, 230 level. I was just looking to see if I had a version of that reconstitution question, but I don't think that I do. All right, I'll let you look at the test, and if you have any questions, just let me know.
So I actually watched like a recording that you must have done for an earlier review of the drug calc test, and number 15, the insulin question. I know what syringe to select. I was just confused about why, and I know you kind of explained it in the recording, but maybe you could explain it again. Why you mark 40 when you're actually drawing up the 10 units of regular insulin first, but you're marking it as at the 40 mark for the solution and the amount to be drawn up first?
Yeah, good question. So first of all, if you're drawing it up first, right, then the stuff that you draw up first is going to be closer to, I always say, like the plunger end, right?
Okay. Like in theory, if it were separated.
You got it. Yes.
Okay.
So I would say, like, at least I've seen updated versions of this question where they just ask you to mark the total on the syringe and not differentiating. They want to know that to draw regular first, but you're not necessarily marking on a syringe, because I agree with you 100% that like what I've written here, it only makes sense if we were like in like space in a vacuum where the liquid's stayed separated, but when you pull them up, and I'm sure you've done this before, they mix. So there is no staying together or separating. That it's not like one's like a different density or something, or an oil based mixture. Anyways, they're just mixed together anyways. But the way that the textbook shows marking the syringe as far as showing is just, you're basically indicating that if the liquids, if the insulin did not mix together, then the initial draw would be closer to the total mark, which is why they give you, that's why it's labeled like this.
Okay. It's so confusing, but I get it.
I agree.
I'm just going to make sure I mark it. And I've probably missed this exact question on both drug calc tests that I've had to take. Because it just doesn't make any sense to me, but I'll just make sure I do it this way.
Yeah. And I would even say, like, you see how I added extra information than what they asked for. And then I even made sure to write like 10 units first, 50 units total. That way we can say that. But when it says the marks, yeah, you want to mark the like total and then minus whatever the first draw was. So if the first draw was 20, then it would be 50 minus 20. You'd make a mark at 30. If the first draw was 20, you know, I'm sorry, 30, then you would subtract 30 from 50 and it would be at 20. So basically you're making a mark where you would put the NPH. And I know that to me is what makes this more confusing, but that's what they want you to do.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Thank you.
You're welcome. When I first started doing these reviews and I first saw this, I would always tell people to put the mark at like 10. So I would say, put an R mark at 10 and then a mark at total, because I took it meaning literally like as if you were doing it, right? And so then I found out that some of the instructors were marking that wrong. And then now I think there's even confusion about what's being marked right, what's being marked wrong. So just be patient, ask your instructor, maybe send them an email today or tomorrow, just say, hey, just want to clarify for the labeling of, the insulin syringe, how do you want us to mark that? So
will do.
Yeah. And I will say, if you did come in a little bit later, I've been asking that you put your name and the campus that you're at in the chat. They asked me to keep track of attendance this time around. So if you didn't do that already, please do so. And while you're kind of milling about this, let me just pull up the, I just want to show you what a reconstitution question might look like at one of the other, at the other campuses. This is from Boyce. So this is what their reconstitution type question looks like, where you have to go through, first identify that you're dealing with a reconstitution question, and then secondly, you want to make sure you have to be able to find it, the concentration or the strength within the label itself. So at Allegheny, we're not doing this yet that I know of, but this is just an example of what a reconstitution question could look like. So maybe you might see it like on an NCLEX or something like that. So some of the updated reviews I've done, because I've been working more with North, South, and Boyce, includes references to these questions. So if you ever were like, oh man, what is, how do I answer this question? I've worked it through just in case you see it on the NCLEX. And I also created like a separate video on YouTube that's just going through a reconstitution problem with this type of label. So you don't have to go through all the, the hour of a review session. Yeah, so for 13, you're exactly right. They are giving you extra information, and the extra information in this example is just the patient's weight.
Okay.
The only time we need to worry about the patient's weight is if it told us that the order was in 5 milligrams per kilogram.
Right. I was like, am I just not seeing something that?
Now that we do want to make sure that you can, realize that there's sometimes going to be extra information that might be listed in the order that has nothing to do with solving the equation. So,
Right.
so yeah, you can just go and say, okay, yeah, we don't need to worry about that. I just need to do 5 divided by 4, and then that's my answer.
Okay.
Yeah, good question.